Okay.
How do we go about doing that work?
Well, I think there are two options. One is I'm under ground rules under which I can't reveal either of your numbers to the other one, and I'm not going to. If you both said that you wanted to reveal your number or authorize me to on condition that the other one did too, I could do that. Or I think at this point the ball is in MedPro's court in the sense that the last offer came from Mumbai, and so I would meet with you and with Pat and see what kind of response you made, because you're at 140 as of now. Those are really the two options, and should think about them for a moment. Maybe if you want to talk to your client, because I know you have sophisticated clients, and we can do either one of those things.
Well, I've spoken with my client about it. We would be willing to disclose the figure that we have given you as our next to last number, with the understanding that it's our next to last, and not that far away from our last.
Okay, I heard that part. Well, do you want to talk with Shalini?
I will. I had certainly hoped that MedPro would be willing to make another offer. But if what you're saying is...
This doesn't exclude another offer. This is about how much information you have other than or in addition to another offer. Well, Chris, while Ragini is out of the room, we're approaching, I sense, a real, if not an impasse, at least a tough situation between 750 and 150. I wonder if it would be useful for me to give you and Ragini some predictions of what might happen on this contract case in the U.S. courts. You don't have to agree with me, but just I do have some views about it, and
I think that would be very helpful, especially for Ms. Gandhi to hear.
Okay. I was talking with Chris while we were out, and I was thinking it might be helpful for me to give a prediction, if you will, of what seems likely to happen based on my experience with the American courts if this case were tried. And we don't know in any one situation what would happen, but if it were tried hypothetically 10 times, what would be the average outcome? I don't know whether that is something that would be useful, or is that...
I think it would be.
Okay. Well, I think there are various theories here, and you've heard them articulated. One is that the contract was terminated for cause. And another is that essentially they gave 90 days notice to the next September 1st, in which case there would be 90 days which you'd be entitled to recovery for profits, and then the contract would terminate. Another theory is that it hasn't terminated at all. It just was ineffective, the termination notice they gave. And Chris, if that were true, is there anything that would prevent them from sending a termination notice next week for this coming September 1st?
Dwight, probably not. We'd obviously argue that the detailed oral discussions and representations that were made should trump the language of the written contract, which is one of the reasons why Ms. Gandhi is so upset, because they had those conversations.
Yep.
It was sort of the handshake to the company meant more than what was written on that piece of paper. That being said, I think the likelihood of prevailing on that legal theory is very low.
Yeah. There seem to be three basic possibilities. One being the termination for cause, another being I'll call the 90-day termination, and the other being the 14-month termination. And I had said no more than a 10% chance that a court would find termination for cause, meaning a 90% chance they'd find they didn't have cause to terminate you. And of the 90%, about let's say a 60% chance of the 90-day termination being ruled effective, and about a 30% chance that it wasn't effective, in which case they'd have to give you full 14 months. If it's termination for cause, there is no recovery. If there is a 90-day termination and you are earning, by your calculation, over $30,000 in profits per month, that's $100,000. If it's 14 months times over $30,000 a month, that comes out to about $460,000. If there's a 60% chance that the 90-day termination would be effective, and it's worth $100,000 as a recovery, that's worth $60,000. If there's about a 30% chance that you would get the full 14 months, 30% of $460,000 is about $140,000. The average verdict would be about $200,000. And that's assuming your profits are accepted by the court. I think that's more likely than not, but it's not certain. So on average, the trial value might be in the $150,000 to $200,000 range under the American court system.
No guarantees. It's just sort of a risk assessment formula based on outcome possibilities.
Yeah, but I mean, this is, well, I just, I don't know much about the American court system, but it's very upsetting because, I mean, actually, the real contract was not this 90-day, 14-month, it was a long-term contract. That
Right.
was the contract. And MedPro has done enough business in India and Asia that they understand that conversation was the contract. They understand that.
Yep.
They know that. And the fact that there's no way to get that into the American courts, I find it very upsetting.
There's also the issue of cost. I don't know what it will cost even approximately to litigate this case. I don't know if you've thought about that, Chris.
Well, I have a good understanding of what their attorneys charge, and if we don't get some major concessions, then we're not going to back down, and I think they're going to have to do a lot of work. So I'm guessing it would cost them about $750,000 to litigate this case.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you, and you have an advantage because you have an efficient, very good lawyer who has much lower overhead than the defense does. It's still, you're going to have to take depositions in India, maybe in China. There's all the emails to go through. What do you think the cost is from your side to litigate it?
Probably $300,000.
Okay. Well, that seems realistic. The problem is then that it pretty well wipes out any recovery.
But don't you also need to take a look at their risk assessment with litigation costs as well?
Yes, and I think that's why they're offering as much as they are, and why I believe that we can get them to go higher, and I believe we can even get the guaranteed, favorable, non-exclusive. In light of this, I think what I need is something, I'd like you to talk, but a move that reflects your understanding of what is likely to happen if we can't get this resolved today and you have to go through litigation, and a signal that will bring them forward into a range that we can settle this. So I'll leave you, do your best, and let's see what happens.
Okay.
Let me report to you on progress, okay? Any deal that we've been talking about for a long time included a non-exclusive arrangement for you to continue to sell oximeters and probes. Okay, so they were at 150 with that non-exclusive arrangement. I came back to you and you said that's not enough. You were at 500, right, with the non-exclusive.
Right.
I went back to them and what they said was they'll go up to 165 with the non-exclusive, but if they're going to go higher than that, they'll take the non-exclusive off the table.
So right now we have a door A or a door B from them. Is that right?
That would be a way of looking at it. They're saying, yes, they would take the non-exclusive part of it off the table if you're pushing them that hard on the cash, yeah.
But I mean, that hurts them as well. You know, if they're not going to be selling in India anymore, I mean, I think that they're just doing this out of spite. It's not really negotiation at this point.
For them, you know, if they don't give you the non-exclusive, they don't have too many people in India selling the product. So it seems strange, right, that why would a business person say no?
Well, also, they've benefited tremendously from the goodwill that Ms. Gandhi has generated.
Right.
In the relevant business community.
I understand that. And they are business people, and you would think that business people would be rational and want to go with a deal that has their best agents, really.
Exactly.
Okay, so here's the problem. They're getting frustrated, and they are feeling pushed, and they are just saying, at some point, over some point in money, and this point right now they're saying it's 165. They just don't want to do it anymore. So whether it's spite, so let me just say, what I worry about is any deal that you do is better for you with the non-exclusive than it is without it. And so I'm communicating that they're getting antsy and they may pull that off the table. And if you want that in the deal, which I think you do, it was worth, we calculated, it was worth somewhere on the order of $300,000 a year to you. And better to do now than 5 years from now, right? Because the other distributors wouldn't have gotten a toehold. Mm-hmm. Then I'm just suggesting that you'll need to come way down on the cash component if you want to keep that in the deal. So why don't you think about it? You know, think about something that is, I don't know, something with a 2 in front of it. It could be a high 2, plus the non-exclusive. Why don't you think about it? I'm just communicating that it's the tensions are running high in the other room, and I feel that one coming off the table.
Well, you can also report to the other room the tensions are running pretty high right here.
I will do that. I have actually been doing that. Assume that you could reach a deal that had a 2 in front of it on cash plus the non-exclusive. Is that better? Is it not what you hoped for? Even if it's frustrating, even if it seems unfair, is it better for you than pursuing the other option, which is to go to trial? That's the question I leave you with. So think about it, and then let's pick it up. Okay, I'll give you a couple minutes if that would help. Okay?
Well, I communicated your move and that to do that, the non-exclusive was gone. Their reaction is really, that's not very much of a monetary move, and the non-exclusive disappearing, they really weren't willing to make a counteroffer. So I think that leaves us with some options. One option is you could make another offer. I can imagine your reluctance on that, but that is an option. Another option is to restore the non-exclusive, because that does have value, and you've communicated to them that it isn't a sure thing by any means, given what's happened. Another option is what I'll call a mediator proposal, and I'd like to explain that in a second. And the fourth option, I guess, is to wait and see if they will blink, so to speak. I'm a little concerned, given what I've seen of Ms. Shah, that she may call an end to the day if we really are with that. So the mediator proposal is this. I would make a proposal. It would be somewhere between where the two parties are. It would probably have a non-exclusive in it, because that's very important to them, but it would not be at the kind of numbers they're seeking. I would ask you to tell me privately, could you agree to it on the assumption that they had agreed to it? And I would ask them the same question. And you'd each tell me privately. They would never know whether you ever were willing to agree to the proposal unless they agreed to it as well. Similarly, if you said no, you'd never find out if they had ever said yes. So each side's bargaining position is protected unless you have a deal. You either have a deal or you're right where you are now and they are where they are now. It's really based on what I think both sides could accept to reach a deal. I don't mean this as a judgment about what's right or wrong, but what is the minimum that each side could accept in order to get to a resolution. And I find that a good 2/3 of the time or more it works. No guarantees, but that would be an option.
I don't think we're inclined to do that, no.
Okay. So I guess the question then is, what would you like to do? Any guidance you can give me about what we should do from this point on would be helpful.
I think we probably need to talk.
Okay,
But-
okay, and really, anything that we can come up with, as long as I can get them to agree to the process, I'm perfectly willing to try.
Okay.
Okay,
We'll
so
try to
let
be
me
quick.
know. Okay. So I don't know if you've had a chance to think about it and reached a conclusion?
We have, and we're not going to be able to do that. When we talked just now, we're pretty firm that we're not going to go past 190. We're just not able to go past.
Okay. Well, would the 190, if necessary, include a non-exclusive so that I could at least offer it to them, even if they're not going to see any number beginning with 2, much less 3 or whatever?
Yes, but that we're not comfortable going any higher.
Okay. Could I indicate that to them? That you're not willing to go to any number that begins with 2, that if it would settle this, you could go to 190 with the non-exclusive, but not to 2 or any number higher than that.
That's
Okay. Well, it will be a very hard sell. I don't know if it'll be successful, but I'll try, and we'll see what their answer will be.
When I was in this room the last time, I explained what a mediator's proposal is. And I asked you remember, to say, will you go along with the idea of a mediator's proposal? You said yes. I asked the same question of the other folks. They said yes to doing the idea of it. My mediator's proposal was at 240, and you folks did say yes to that. But what I need to, unfortunately, to tell you now is that they rejected it. So they said no to the 240. They don't know, however, that you said yes. So we're a little stuck. Technically, everybody is at where their numbers were before. And I'd hate to come back to people after a mediator's proposal. But I guess my question to you is, look, if I could get them to 225, could you folks swallow that?
Well, it's.
I didn't say it was fair. I'm just asking.
It's still below our bottom line, but I assume we're still talking about non-exclusive
Yep.
and most favored status.
Yes.
I think we could think about it.
Okay. So, why don't I poke around with them a little bit and see? I know they've said no to the 240, and why don't I poke around and see if I think I could get them there before I start floating out more numbers. Okay? So I'm not gonna. As I'm hearing you, you'd think about it if it would do it. I'm going to poke with them, see if I could get them to something like that. And if so, let people consider it. Because I don't want to come back and say, oops, I didn't get that either. It's the end of a long day. And for everybody. Here's what I want to suggest. I want to ask you to make a last and final offer. The good news about that is that I'm never coming back to you for more. I hereby pledge, Scout's honor. And we're now in a range, by the way, where I can say to you, oh, good heavens, you should really take this because the fees involved were so close. Is it 10, 15, 20 grand more than maybe somewhere it should be? Maybe. But it'll get it, if it'll get it done, is it worth it to you to do it as opposed to spending any more of your time worrying about this? This is where the range, and I can make that same speech to them, but I'm going to suggest that, I will. I'm going to suggest that I'm going to ask you for a last and final number. That's one that I think I can get them to do. I'm not asking you for any more. And that amount is 225. I know it's more, but are we digging in just to dig in, or is it worth it? If it's worth it for you to pay where you are now, is it also worth it to pay $225
with a non-exclusive?
with the non-exclusive, which is to your benefit? Stop paying your lawyer, move on.
Can we make it 210? I mean, with all these same variables, is it really worth it? Let them take a little nibble out, and how about 210?
Here's my thinking. Okay, you're actually, I mean, you're a business guy, and but you know, people make decisions about numbers based on emotions and sticking points and all that, and I am getting a lot of that from the other side. So here's my concern with 210. 210 is going to sound to them like barely over 200. Okay.
That's how it sounds to me.
I know. Yeah. Well, but so you know, I could do 220 by saying, because it. I mean, I suspect if I can get them to 225, I should be able to get them to 220. But at this point, it's not worth. If I could have 220, I can sell it to them as not just being barely 200.
215? Does 215 have that sound?
Well, here's the issue, okay? If you say 215 to me, I might have to break my promise and come back to beg for 200. You don't want that, right? You don't want that. No. So I'm saying, if you just give me 220, then I'll keep my promise.
Let's do it.
Okay. I mean, you know, it's not worth your time, your company's trouble to keep this going. So,
Absolutely.
Good. I appreciate that. I hereby pledge I'm not coming back to
We'll
ask
hold
you
you
for
to
more. I'll either come back and say we have a deal, you know, and I will now spend, I bet you, a lot of time with them trying to see if I can sell that number as your last and final. I really am hearing from you that it is your last and final, and I will respect that. Okay.
So, I talked to them, and with the idea that, and not necessarily telling them that you could accept 225, I saw what could be done. And at first, the reaction I get was that they would not go above 200. That just seemed to be a mental barrier for them, psychological. I sometimes find that if I tell people that something will be the last and final, the last time I come to them, I can actually get them to go beyond where they said they would. So I decided to try that. And we went back and forth between 225, and in the end, by telling them that I would not ask them for any more, I eventually got them to say they would go to 220. So they will go to 220, but that was with me telling them I couldn't say that you'd accept that. I don't know that you will. But it was simply telling them, all right, you've got to go that far, but if you will, I will ask Mumbai whether they would accept that with the non-exclusive and with the most favored nation guarantee, so that you wouldn't be under the kind of contract you've been in the past and the uncertainty. They've put it on the table.
So this is a firm offer.
That they will pay. So yes, that's the offer. And I know it's nowhere what appears fair, but in terms of what we can get today and what the American legal system can provide and certainty, so you can put this behind you, I think it has a lot to recommend it. And I'd ask you to just think about it. It's your decision.
We've had some conversations about this, and I think given the need for closure, we've come a long way. I think we're willing to accept that offer.
Okay. I think that makes good business sense for you, and you've come out way ahead of where the legal system would put you. So, in those terms, it's a good decision, and I think they're far above where they thought they would be, but that's where it has to be in order to settle this. So now I'm going to ask you if Chris and Rosanna would get together with me. We'll write up a basic term sheet. We'll initial it so we know it's tied down, and you can go back to your business, and the lawyers will do what's necessary to end the case and to provide the payment. Okay? Congratulations.